Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the precise mechanics behind a really fascinating literary trick. We're going to look at exactly how writers manage to take standard, printed text and transform it into an incredibly vivid sensory experience.
So think about this for a second. Have you ever literally seen a picture or maybe heard a distinct sound just by reading words on a page? You're staring at black ink on white paper, yet somehow your brain manages to conjure up this bright, sunny day or the loud crash of thunder. Well, it's not magic, I promise you. It's actually a highly calculated literary tool.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1, the power of imagery.
So, what is this foundational tool? It's imagery. At its core, imagery is descriptive language that intentionally engages the human senses to create a vivid mental experience. You can think of it as the direct bridge from the text on the page straight to our five senses. It's basically the key to unlocking the imagination.
Let's look at our first major type, Section 2, visual imagery, or seeing words.
The whole difference between the various types of imagery just comes down to which of our human senses they actually trigger. So visual imagery explicitly uses descriptive language that relates to our sense of sight. It's all about creating mental pictures of exactly how things look. Let's make this concrete. Take this excerpt from a literature and English exam paper. As I read this, try to actively picture the scene in your mind's eye. Ready? The boat nodded, in timing with the gentle, bobbing of the float on the unhurrying tide.
Do you see what's happening there? Words like gentle bobbing and unhurrying tide, they practically paint a vivid picture of calm weather for us. They force us to actually see the boat's physical rhythmic movement. Or consider another excerpt we found, which describes a tree as being brightened by the last fires of a tribe. That specific word, brightened, it immediately and exclusively targets our sense of sight.
All right, let's switch gears. Section 3, auditory imagery, or hearing words.
So if visual imagery is for the eyes, auditory imagery is strictly for the ears. This is language directly relating to the human sense of hearing. The writer uses words that are meticulously chosen to describe sounds or even the precise quality of a sound.
Let's test this out with a quote from Seamus Heaney's famous poem, Digging. I want you to listen really closely to this. Under my window, a clean, rasping sound when the spade sinks into gravelly ground.
Did you catch it? The word rasping right there in the middle? That is a highly specific auditory experience. Heaney doesn't just casually say, I heard digging. No, by using the word rasping, he forces us, the reader, to hear the exact gritty friction of a metal spade scraping against small stones and gravel.
And auditory imagery can get a whole lot louder and more chaotic than that. Take this excerpt from an unseen poetry test. Rebels, boom, boom, boom. The heart pants at the sound of the blast. The surrounding lines actually go on to specify that the sound of guns was everywhere.
Now, what's really interesting here is that when you encounter boom, 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 you're dealing with onomatopoeia. These are words that literally imitate the natural sound of a thing. It is kind of the ultimate form of auditory imagery because it bypasses normal description entirely just to mimic the explosive reality of a blast.
Moving right along to Section 4, comparing sight and sound.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core distinction we've been talking about. Visual imagery focuses entirely on what can be seen, like those brightened fires or the bobbing of a boat. Auditory imagery, on the flip side, focuses purely on what can be heard, the rasping of metal or the loud boom of a gun. The difference completely, 100% relies on which of the human senses they engage.
So, we get the theory, right? But what does this all actually mean for us? How does isolating these senses help us decode completely unfamiliar poems when we're put on the spot? That brings us to our final section, Section 5, decoding unseen poetry.
When you're analyzing unseen poetry, say you're sitting for a WAAC literature and English exam, our sources outline a really specific, foolproof strategy. Step 1, always read the poem at least twice. Step 2, listen internally to grasp the tone of the piece. And Step 3, actively isolate those visual and auditory literary devices we just talked about. By mapping out the sensory language, the poem actually transforms from just a wall of text into a totally navigable emotional landscape. Now, a massive part of isolating those devices is recognizing the poet's diction, their specific word choices, because that diction is what builds the overall emotional tone. For example, if you spot aggressive words like trample,
venom, or savage, you know right away you're dealing with an angry tone. Words like fake, trap, or illusion build up a cynical tone. But then if you find visual imagery like bloom, radiant, or soar, the environment immediately shifts into a joyful, celebratory tone.
So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want you to consider this. The next time you read a poem, are you just going to mechanically process the words? Or will you actively engage your senses to actually see the gentle bobbing and hear that clean, rasping sound of the hidden worlds they create? Read with your senses, and I guarantee the page will come alive. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.